different people joining us today, so I never want to say I am a subject matter expert in this subject. Next slide, please. All right, today we really want to talk about the harder side of sheltering. We don't really talk about this a lot. We are all of us as a group. We're vulnerable to experiencing a lot of stress reactions, whether it's fight or flight or freeze, as anyone else can have these reactions. But knowing that we can learn and practice skills that are going to help us, this is invaluable. And recognizing what skills and strengths we already have is even better. So it's all part of this awareness building. I must stop for a minute. Eway, could you please call Darlene and let her know how to log in on her Red Cross email, please? I think she's having problems with that. That would be wonderful. And as you can see, none of us are perfect in our technical proficiencies. It's all in learning. But today we're going to cover a lot of different subjects, from difficult conversations to conflict between our clients and volunteers. We're going to talk about how to de-escalate a conflict. We really want to slow down events and cool down tempers, kind of a calm approach to how to get clients and volunteers to stop acting out, and how to handle the stress of working in a shelter. And finally, we're going to touch on our own psychological first aid. We've spent the last few weeks covering a variety of topics about sheltering and feeding, but this presentation covers the emotional side of every disaster relief operation. And I'm really hoping we have a lot of questions after we're done presenting, because try to remember, every situation we encounter is different. So we are offering skills that could work for you in general in life. We hope you take this presentation and apply it to your everyday life. And also take time to really consider. This presentation really is about sheltering, but there are many activities involved in the daily life at a Red Cross shelter. We have logistics, they bring us stuff. We have feeding, they drop off the food. We have health services, they make sure our clients, all the medical needs are met. We have mental health on site to help our clients and our staff deal with any difficult situations. And then we have the local community resources that are coming in to offer services to our clients. And none of these activities are really required to take shelter training, and yet they may have an opinion on how to run a shelter. So we're going to take the time today to find out ways to communicate with our coworkers and our clients in a meaningful way. So let's take a minute to go over what our sheltering operation really looks like. Next slide, please. So what does it look like? So we have evacuations. They've been announced. Clients are coming to our shelter, and they either stay inside or they stay outside in their car or camper. There are food, cots, and water offered to our clients. And a lot of our clients, they just want information on when they can go back home, how they can get information on the status of their home. And they want to know who's going to offer them a quick fix on anything they need to maintain their daily life. And then when we have clients that actually stay overnight, then our volunteers, we attempt to obtain correct information to put in our SCIA, which is the Shelter Client Information Application. And then we set up a lot of cots, we make a lot of coffee, we contact breastfeeding, about special requirements. We refer clients to health services or mental health, and we keep clients safe from wherever they've been evacuated from. And then we offer our clients a smile and have them to have time to vent to us if they have anything on their mind. Next slide, please. So, what do we ask of you as a shelter worker? Well, we ask a lot from our volunteers, and most of us are willing to accept this assignment with very little information. So, if you've never been to an area hit by a hurricane, you have no idea the devastation, the flooded roads, the limited meal options, which are like MREs. Those are the ready meals that taste so yummy, and the mosquitoes that are everywhere. And then if you've never worked a fire, there's smoke, your eyes are burning, and lots of farm animals that we try to accommodate. So the other thing, you might be asked to stay at the same shelter you're working on or drive a very long way for your shift, and then you're working another 12 hours because there's no other accommodations available locally. So after, and several deployments, you as volunteers can understand this chaos that surrounds every disaster. But for first timers, this is mind blowing, especially when we talk about complex shelters, as Sherry and Candace talked about, in previous sessions that we've had. So it's really a lot to ask of our volunteers. So let's just take a minute and think about our last deployment, and let's jump right in here. Next slide, please. So a lot of times communication is really where we struggle with. And of course, there are four types of communication. There's the verbal, the nonverbal, visual, and written. So no matter how we're going to communicate, you got to really start and think about who who is your audience and what they're going to be thinking or feeling. And once they're receiving your message or reading your message, how are they going to understand it? This can even go with, various languages that we have to deal with. So, as you know, at our shelters, we use big white poster boards to write things. We set up information boards to offer information to our clients. Hopefully, we have shelter meetings every day so we know, what is going on in our community. We post the rules poster to communicate what our expectations are to all of our clients. And hopefully, in our communications here, we offer a job induction for our volunteers so they understand what it is that we expect for them to do. And then again, a daily turnover meeting to keep our volunteers. And when I talk about that daily turnover meeting, I'm including all of the activities in the shelter. So that would include as many people that are in the shelter. We want everyone to get on the same meeting. So we're bringing them up to speed on what is actually happening at the shelter, so everyone understands what the current situation is at that time. And when it's time to have these difficult conversations, we want to communicate confidently. You have to really believe in your ability to handle the situation. And we have to stay composed. We have to communicate clearly. And, paraphrase, what they are saying and repeat back what the other person said. And also make sure you're controlling your response. There's no eye rolling, there's no big sighs or anything. You're going to adjust your communication style based on the situation or the person. It's hard handling these difficult conversations. They can be really tough. We don't want clients or volunteers to be upset. So a lot of times we avoid these conversations because that's really the easiest way to do it. And I admit I have done that before. But if it's a client that you have to talk to, you really want to choose your words carefully. You want to really know what is the goal of this conversation? Do you want them to change a behavior? Do you want them to check in with the front desk on a daily basis? Do you want them to understand the rules of the shelter? So, really think about what you're talking about and have a clear message. Don't talk in circles and run around and not get directly to the point, and be honest. And then talk to your supervisor. Ask for help in these conversations and don't be afraid to ask others for support. You don't know what other volunteers are bringing to this event. They could be amazingly conversationalists and you didn't know that. So this could be part of the daily meeting that you're having with your other volunteers and finding out what their strengths are. So as we keep talking about in these various sessions that we're having, work in pairs of two and make sure your message, make sure it's clear. And if there's a deadline on it with a time and a date to complete, well, then we have to make sure we follow up and we don't just let it go to the wayside. You know, and again, we have to have difficult conversations with our volunteers, but we have to really be respectful. You have to take time and you have to listen to the volunteer. And you have to really be empathetic with what they're going through. Now, you can't control how they're going to react to your conversation, but I want you to manage your emotions. The volunteer could be collaborative on the situation. A lot of times we want to have common goals. We all volunteer for the Red Cross. So we want to make sure that we take the time and we're going to summarize, make sure we understand exactly what we're hearing. Don't embellish on it. I like to use one of my favorite things is the conversation sandwich. So it involves making sure that the negative feedback that you're trying to share gets stuck between two positive comments. So I use kind of like, here's an example. I really appreciate how hard you're working, Eway. You meet the goals of our clients, but I'm concerned that you're spreading yourself too thin by not sharing the workload with the other volunteers. The volunteers at your work site, they really look up to you and want to grow in their role. And can you please take the time to share? So that's kind of giving it the nice way of saying, stop doing everything and let other people do it, along with you. We don't want people sitting around. So now you've let the volunteer know you recognize how hard they're working, but you also have to let them know that the other volunteers are not being utilized and they want to help too. So you have to come across, be really confident in your remarks and don't make it about yourself. You really have to state your purpose and move on. Now, the conversation that we've just had, it's been more pleasant for both sides, hopefully, but I'm positive it will be. And finally, don't, please don't wait until the situation gets way out of hand. If it's affecting your ability to succeed or making you uncomfortable, please let someone know. If you speak to your supervisor and nothing happens, or if it's your supervisor making you uncomfortable, please speak to the staff advocate or your workforce. I'm not going to guarantee that any changes can be made, but at least you have been heard and maybe you can be changed to another location. All right, I'm going to take a minute. Eway, do we have Linda and Darlene on with their Red Cross email?
No, so Linda is not on. Darlene is on, and Darlene is able to unmute herself. Darlene, do you want to try to unmute yourself just to see if we can hear you? Darlene, if you're talking, we're not able to hear you. Darling, we have another way that you can dial in the number. Then you can use mic on the dial in phone number to see if we can make that work. Jane, would you like to continue?
I I will continue, but I'm hoping we have some fun times here today. All right,
Okay.
let's
Sorry, Jane, interrupt. I have a phone number that I raised a hand. Is this Darlene 310 591 9293?
that's not a phone number I have, but we do have a hand raised.
Okay,
Do
I
we
see Linda here. Okay, let me go ahead and allow mic for Linda. Linda, can you come off mute to see if we can hear you? Jane, I think let's continue. Sherry, can you do me a favor? Sherry Curtis, can you call Linda and Darlene to see if we can help them to get on? Thank you.
or can we just leave a phone number and the super secret code in the chat? It's, this is what happens. At least we didn't have a beaver chew through a tree and knock the tree down and lose all the power. So we have that going for us. Next slide, please. All right. So our next lovely topic is conflict and aggression. So a lot of times we have clients that express some different views and have a hard time staying in our shelter. But we really want to make sure that all of our clients feel welcome. And we really want to take a moment and make eye contact with everything. We really want them to know that they're welcome. Now, I am going to set a limit here. I don't want anyone to touch their cot or their personal belongings unless they give you permission. I'm seeing in this picture here that we use that the volunteer is sitting, it looks like on the same cot. So I always say, try to find seats somewhere, maybe over in the feeding section. Just be careful sitting on their stuff or getting in the middle of their stuff. And then, as we all want to know, learn what their name is. And if you don't know their name, address them as sir or madame. Give them the respect that they deserve. We can provide privacy screens. We can offer, whatever they need to create a sense of normalcy in their life. Because, I go back to how are you going to feel if you're evacuating to a shelter and you are having a really bad day? How do you want to be treated? How would you want your mom to be treated, as I always go back to? So, and the biggest thing is never say, I know how you feel, because we don't. One of the things I like to encourage our volunteers to say is there anything we can provide for you today to make it better? You never know. It might be something easy that we missed. Um, Sometimes when we ask questions, when the answer would be fine, we don't get into the information that we're looking for. So ask questions that are leading instead of just yes or no. And then when there is conflict, try to provide opportunities for clients to make as many choices and decisions on their own as possible. You want to ask the client whether and how they would like to receive the help. Not everyone seeks assistance or even understands that we're trying to help them. Maybe we get a little too helpful or something. So we're trying very hard to make them feel very welcome. And then, really, we're trying to create a calm environment in this shelter. And I know that sounds like a hard thing, but create a quiet room, a place to sit outside, to smoke, or to talk on the phone. I have to admit, I think it's really cute to have children running around playing because, to me, that brings normalcy. But there are some clients that do not appreciate that. So let's create a separate play area. Maybe that would be more productive. And then really take the time and look around. Observe the clients in your shelter. Speak calm and controlled. Don't sit behind a table all day and not have, any conversations except behind a desk. The table is really not a good way. People like to get a little closer. And then when you are in any situations, acknowledge it without any judgment. A lot of times these conflicts, they arise because people are tired, they're, there's incompatible personalities, which goes both ways with volunteers and clients. There's a lot of cultural differences, and someone would need to school me on, what different clients on what they need. And there's a lot of other factors that could be involved. And the shelter supervisor and the shelter manager, they're really trying hard to maintain this positive working environment to provide the best possible client service and staff well-being. And that's when the rainbows and unicorns are coming out. But that's really what we're striving for. But really, our supervisory staff, they're responsible for addressing the conflicts they with corrective or disciplinary action as quickly as possible. And they should address all reports of disagreements, differences, and minor conflicts and report up to their supervisor. And this could be a phone call, a text, an email, and make sure you are stating the facts. So when we learn about a conflict in a shelter, they should try to speak separately to the individuals involved to get a better understanding, talk about the different perspectives, issues, and concerns of each person. We are not going to be able to take care of every person's differences in our shelter. But, when we encounter a conflict, whether it's a client or a volunteer, try to remain calm. Use those active listening techniques and don't take sides. You know, determine the cause of the conflict and really work to try to diffuse it. We have disaster mental health or spiritual care, and they can meet individually with either the staff or the client, and they can try to determine these levels of fatigue and stress that are happening in our shelter. So it's just a matter of taking the time. And then you can even hold a joint meeting, you know, and try to mediate it. If everyone is evacuated and they don't have anywhere else to go, then try to understand that they're all going to stay there. We want to really take time and look for this effective resolution. You know, ask the people in there, what is a possible solution to this? And remind the individuals that their behavior is causing stress to our clients, our staff, and it violates our policies. We don't want people to feel unsafe. That's why there are shelter rules posted that have to be followed. Our clients, they have to feel safe in our shelter, and then document those actions and discussions. You have the confidential manager log report, you have the shelter manager log, and then talk to staff advocate if you need more help. Although Sherry is telling me staff advocate is not part of it anymore, but I'm using the wrong term, and that's okay. There's staff relations, and also you can talk to the sheltering manager or coordinator just to get ideas on how we can, you know, take this conflict and make it a little easier in our shelter. Do we want to stop for a minute and answer any questions so far, Iwe?
Yes, let's stop a little bit to give Jane a little break. Let's do the test one more time. Darlene, are you able to unmute and come off mute and
I
see
can
if we
talk
can
on,
hear you?
I'm talking on the phone. Can you hear me?
Perfect, Darlene. Would you like to say something to add to all this and to give Jane a little break?
Um, okay. I apologize. I've gotten a little confused with trying to do the technology at the same time. On my screen, it still says that I'm muted. So what you're saying is people can't hear me?
That's correct. I am hearing you right now.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. I've never done this with a telephone before. So, yes, Jane, I was trying to react, Jane, to what you were saying. I was trying to send you hearts. That's exactly right. Backing up just a little bit when you were talking about the conversation in the sandwich, that's wonderful. Validating the person. And the one little tweak that I guess I've learned in mental health is to say and. So, you know, wow, I can see that you're working really hard, and it would be helpful if you could use some of that energy to support some of the other staff who are trying to learn from you because you're such a good role model, and I really appreciate what you're doing. Can and I would ask a question to the participants. Maybe they could respond. Is there a sense, can you feel kind of viscerally the difference between that saying and rather than saying but? Because but kind of puts a stop on it. It's like, uh-oh, something else is coming that's not as good, right? So if we say and, it kind of avoids that a little bit. It's not perfect. And if we don't remember, that's okay too, right? Because we're being spontaneous and we're under stress as well. So it won't always happen, but it's something I actually just practice in my life in order to keep myself in the habit. Sort of like I worked in the school system, so I practice not saying profanity at home because otherwise it would slip out when I didn't want it to. So I practice using and does anybody have any response to that? Can they feel the difference, or is it just me? Oh, I see one heart. Thank you to whoever that was. Thank you. Yay. Okay. Yay. Okay. Thank
Darlene,
you.
that's a great idea. And it really does, it's one word and it really changed the tone of what we're saying. Just with the and really does help. And I know you
Right. Yeah.
guys are going to be out there at a shelter and you're going to stop and you're going to say, what was that word Darlene said? So and is an easy one to remember. Thank you for that, Darlene. I really appreciate that.
Oh, and thank you for that because I appreciate that. This is a new experience for me. And by the way, Joan was the first sheltering experience I had. She was the manager and was so helpful to me. So I really appreciate you, Jane.
Well, thank you. Okay, next slide. We are going into de-escalation. Now that we have gotten everybody, hyped up on conflict, can we go to the next slide, please, Eway? Eway, can you hear? Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, so now we're trying very hard. We've got a conflict going, and we're trying very hard to make sure our response to this bad behavior, and I can call it bad behavior because this is a safe group I'm with tonight. It's we really just want to avoid any physical confrontation with someone because they could have, been really, really mad or upset, and we just want to make sure we take care of ourselves and the people around us. And again, when we're looking at this conflict, don't look for the blame. Don't stand there with your arms crossed, kind of, have that look, that you're mad, because that body language is huge in this communication. And Darlene's going to add more, but try to stand a little bit away, a foot and a half to 3 feet away, and because Darlene's going to add on exactly how to position our body, because we just want to allow the personal space So we're trying to decrease this anxiety and we're trying to prevent this acting out behavior. And and just like we've talked before, we really want to talk low and slow. We again, I'll keep repeating this. You're going to remain calm. Try to remain rational if all else fails, please remain professional. While you can't control other people's behavior, how you respond to their behavior, it's going to have a direct effect on whether this situation escalates or diffuses. Darlene, what you had a comment about how we want to stand when we are diffusing a situation or de-escalating.
Oh, perfect, Jane. And personal space was the perfect way to phrase that. Again, this is generally good anyway with everybody, rather than being face to face. If you could see me, I would have my two hands like they were talking to each other. Face to face is less safe than standing perpendicular. So if it's a short person, that's the 1.5 to 3 feet, a leg length. You don't sort of mentally, again, this is just practice. If they kicked out, would they hit you? So you want to be far enough so that they would have to take a step in order to kick you. I mean, that sounds really rude, but it's true. So standing perpendicular and at least one of their leg lengths away. Now, you can still engage because your upper body is making eye contact and facing them. With some people, because there's a lot of cultural issues surrounding eye gaze. In some cultures, it's respectful to have direct eye contact, eye gaze. In other cultures, that's considered disrespectful. So being aware of the body language and the signs that the person is giving off is really important. And you'll feel it. Each of you who are volunteers, I have no doubt, have a really good instinct. And you're really caring people, or you probably wouldn't be there. So I think you'll sense that. And again, these aren't hard and fast rules. They're just sort of safety measures. So staying one leg length apart, off to the side rather than face to face. So, and yeah, I wish I could show you a picture because I even in the email that I sent to Jane, I have little emoji with so I'm hoping that my words are descriptive enough that you can understand what I'm saying. Are there any questions about that part?
No questions in the chat.
Darlene, I really like the part that you said about our cultural differences because I did miss that part of it. So thank you for reminding us because, it's the same with, shaking hands. Some people don't shake hands. So, there's so much of this that we think we all, are calm and safe and it can really escalate, and so, thank you for those words because part of it is, we really want the person, to talk about what their frustration is. It could be something as simple as, when is FEMA coming? Well, we don't really have control over of that. And you really want to make sure that you know, follow up with, I think, what I like to say is what I'm hearing you say is so that you make sure that you understand what they're saying because you don't want to tell them what they're feeling. We don't ever want that and we don't want to raise our voice. As Darlene said, we really want to make that personal connection because it's really, this whole de-escalation. There's this whole range. People don't usually go from, this calm to furious in a heartbeat. And also they don't go from furious to dangerous to calm and then subdued. So, we just want to take time with these de escalation tactics. We want to follow a path of reducing people's agitation slowly. Yelling and having a negative tone, it doesn't do anything to change a person's behavior for the better. So in our day-to-day challenges, it's easier, for most of us to ask the subject to move, away from everyone else, and then de-escalate the situation. And when a person is upset, they may not be able to think clearly and really express themselves. So give them a few minutes, let them think about what they want to say, and then give them time to reflect. Um, Darlene, do you have another comment for us?
Oh, and I was just going to say that was spot on. That's exactly because if we escalate, they're just going to feel their fight, flight, freeze, fawn. That whole stress cycle will just kick in, and our literally our visual field narrows, and that goes for us as well as them. So one of the things I was going to say along the way is that also gives you a chance as you're slowing down to take a deep breath, right? Because that's really important. And maybe shift your gaze to the whole room. Intentionally broaden your visual field because people get very narrow focused. That's part of our primitive brain's way of protecting us. If there's a tiger, you don't care if the trees are pretty, right? You just want to focus on the tiger and decide if you're going to run or fight him. So that low and slow phrase that you used, Jane, was so spot on. Remember to take a deep breath. It helps you as well because often we feel stressed as well. We feel our stress response kicking in, and be aware of your own signals. Are your muscles tightening? Are you clenching your fist? Right? It's just so important for all of us because we have things called mirror neurons. So we pick up on each other. That's what we do. We're people. We're human, and that's okay. As a matter of fact, that's a good thing. And our primitive brain is a good thing. That whole stress response is a good thing because it's made to help us survive. The trouble is sometimes, so what we need to really focus on is we're safe in this moment. To remind ourselves of that, to remind the person, the client, with the other, whoever we're working with, right, is like, this is for safety. This is our safety. We want you to be safe here. This rule, I know some people don't like it. I don't like it much either. However, it does help us stay safe. And I know you care about the other people here, and we care about you. And there's no way that I can give you the language. I suspect that each of you already have that language. So it's just the idea.
Thank you, Darlene. And I really hope we don't have any tigers in our shelter, but now I would like to see one. So thank you. That actually is a very good visual. And again, I'm going to bang on this one again. Make sure you have another volunteer with you. We work in pairs to keep each other safe. Next slide, please. All right. So, this is what this whole presentation is about, because you can't eliminate all this stress from your life and your job. So take time. Know what your triggers are. Know what your limits are. Are you able to handle clients that have lost everything, including family and friends? You really have to take time and be honest with yourself. You really need to pay attention to your own physical health. You need to sleep, and you need to eat, and you need to eat healthy, and you need to exercise, because that exercise releases those endorphins into your brain. We know all this, and it can help you, and it helps lessen the stress in your day. It also helps you take a healthy break from any part of the stressors that are in your day. So, really, I'm going to really stress on the eating part. Eating that healthy diet has a huge impact on your mood. And if you just eat snacks all day, you may not be in the best mood by the end of your shift. You don't want to get hangry or anything. And then set time aside. You have to relax and you have to socialize and you have to connect with your family and you have to make sure your friends know what you're doing. And you have to make sure you walk outside every once in a while. I don't know if it's going to be raining or if there's going to be sunshine, but please, take time to walk outside away from any situations. And the reason I really like this picture that we're using today of Philip is because of Philip's smile. His smile is amazing and it really brings joy to a lot of our clients. Now, personally, I like to watch videos of baby kangaroos because that's what brings joy to my life. So we're trying to think of ways we want to cope with stress in our life. And then think about what skills we bring to our event to help mitigate the stress around you. All right, next slide, please. All right, here we go. We are now the shelter manager and we're along with the Red Cross volunteers and we spend all this time trying to maintain this safe, secure, and welcoming environment, trying to ensure our clients that we're trying to get everybody to comply with these shelter rules. We don't have a lot of rules, but we're trying to get them to comply with them. And you want to remind the clients and the staff what our rules are in the shelter. You can post the lights out time, the meal times, when the county social services is going to be on site, if FEMA is going to come to your location, but sometimes our clients, they just want to be in charge of one thing in their life, and sometimes it is necessary to evict clients from a shelter or if they repeatedly or they seriously violate our rules, if they have any physical altercations, verbal abuse, or any disturbance. But really, take time and make sure that the sheltering headquarters lead, make them aware of the situation. And you want to make sure you're keeping good notes and you want to time the notes and if you called 911, note everything on that shelter log. And now we can make notes in Skya because that just came available to us. So make sure we note everything. And I don't want to say eviction is the first thing that we're doing, but it's only going to happen after all other options have been exercised. Or, this threat to our other clients and staff is just too great to allow this individual to remain. Sometimes if they just do a little bit and we ask them to change their behavior and they're fine. So think about, how you report this information to your supervisor. Again, keep to the facts. What happened? What is your time and how it was resolved? This is not the time to be adding drama to the story. Find out, who do you contact with this information? And then what previous incidents occurred with this client? Again, we're hoping, that there are good notes in either the shelter log or our client's information on Skya. And then I just wanted to add, Darlene, who has been helping me today, she was with us in San Diego when we were closing the shelter. And I specifically asked her to stay while the shelter was closing because a lot of times at the time when we have to ask people to leave, this is when we have clients that are not willing to leave. And we really need to make sure the right people are there on site, because we have to make sure we're de-escalating the situation. We're remaining calm, we're remaining rational and very professional. So, and also, we have a psychological first aid on Edge. It only takes an hour and it's great to rewatch it and remember the tips that are offered. Also in Edge, there's Percipio. And it's this learning platform, and it offers a lot of variety of classes that really help us, with all of these soft skills to keep us little tips and tricks in mind. Darlene, did you want to add anything for us on dealing with misbehaving clients?
No, the only thing I would add is be calm, kind, and firm. Um, Now, there are some people that don't respond well to that. Again, I honor and respect the individual instinct of each of you. As a general statement, I would just add the word kind to that, because again, the caring comes across. And often, when people are defensive, when they start to misbehave, I hesitate to use that word, but we all know what we mean. Um, it's because they're scared, and so if we can be reassuring and remind and even ask them, and do you have contact with somebody, and where will you be going from here, and can I help connect you with somebody that's going to help with that? So if we can kind of offer that, it might in some cases make it a little easier.
And here we come with the word and again. It sounds like that's going to be my new go-to word. Thank you, Darlene.
You're
Eva,
welcome.
next slide, please.
Jane, before we go on to the next slide, I think Linda is on. Do you mind if we do a sound check with Linda to see if she can come off mute and to see if she wants to
Please,
add anything to this?
please.
Linda, would you like to unmute yourself and see if we can hear you? Linda, we're not able to hear you. We'll circle back with you on the next slide and we'll try again. Jane, we'll go to the next slide.
Thank you. All right. So we just talked about this class that we have on Edge, and we're going to use the word resilience a lot. So resilience really means, the definition is how we recover quickly from difficulties. So we're really trying to build this psychological resilience so that we can be strong when facing these stressful events. And this psychological resilience, this is the ability to bounce back from stressful situations. We want to make sure that if we encounter one situation, it doesn't drag us down the whole time, because everyone has resilience. That's what we all do in our daily life, and it's learned. We can learn how to do it. We can learn how to bounce back, and it can be strengthened. And a lot of times, the best part of our resilience, and as we like to talk about in our shelter, we have to adapt to changes and a lot of challenges, because that's how that happens. So when we talk about strengthening our resilience on how to recover, we really try to increase our ability to cope with all these challenges and stresses that come into, our lives. And it can be both from clients and other volunteers. And it could also be from the situation that we find ourselves deployed in if we're not aware of the challenges. So we really want to encourage, positive coping skills, because again, we want to learn how to cope with different things. You know, we repeat, on how they've worked out for us and our different life experiences, and whether or not, these consequences, if they were acceptable or not. And we all have a different, our own particular style and strategy for coping. um, and it's not always positive and helpful. A lot of times we go straight to the negative. So we really want to take, those negative coping strategies that we have, you know but it's not very helpful in the long run. We want to stop that negative stuff and only think about positive stuff, because that negative coping, it's just going to make this whole situation that we're in, it's going to make it worse. So We do have crises sometimes in our shelters, and we also have them in our lives. And, we can't keep these difficult times from happening, but what we can control is our response to them. So we got to really focus on what we can control, how we react and how we manage these situations. You know, a lot of times we dwell on, oh, I can't control that, and it overwhelms us. Well, then don't dwell on it. Find something different, because we really need to keep things into perspective. You got to keep in mind that big picture of your life. You're only deployed for 2 or 3 weeks, so don't blow these events out of proportion. Sometimes it feels a little overwhelming or upsetting, but just take the situation, and balance it out with positive experiences and try to walk away with some really good things. And really, I want you to think about how, when you're at a shelter, you're going to make people feel comfortable and at ease. Again, whether it's other volunteers or clients, just use common courtesies, as I've said before. Help someone with their coat, help them find a chair to sit down, talk to everybody, make eye contact, and use a calm voice. We do well when people feel comfortable. And, as Darlene said before, be kind. We want to be calm and compassionate, and show it through your mannerisms that you care and respect this person that you're helping. Now, as I say that, you got to be really careful about touching people. I don't know, in different cultures, touching might feel comfortable to some people, but you really need to make sure, if a person is really distressed, I'm not positive just giving them a hug is the best thing that they're looking for, because we don't want to get too close into their personal space. So even though you're giving them some reassurance, that, what the situation is, we want to make sure we give them accurate information. You know, Never say everything is fine or will be fine, because we don't know. You know, you can say, I can see how you feel that way, or, just, try to react, let people react how they're going to react. You can reassure them, that their resilience is going to help them get through this difficult situation. You know, Seriously, we ask them to sleep on really hard cots. What can we do to make that better? If it's been a few days, maybe we can get our partners to help us out and, get some pads or something on there, because if people are comfortable, and it really makes a difference in their life. And again, we talk a lot about information, how we're sharing our information and how we're doing our resources. Make sure that, if there are other resources around the community, and mental health services, make sure everyone in the shelter knows when these services are going to be available to them. We always have 211 that you can dial. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't actually know 211 is available everywhere in the United States. I'm assuming in San Diego it is. But that just in San Diego, you call 211 and it connects you to another human, and then they offer information, and it helps us find human services and resources available. A lot of it is basic needs, childcare services. Um, it also connects us to any food banks or soup kitchens that are around. The other source is the Military One source. If we have anyone who is a service member or a family member of a service member, the Military One source, it's a great place to go to know what resources are available for our service members. So make sure our clients are asking for help. Make sure that our volunteers are asking for help. Make sure our volunteers, are talking to their friends and family, to speak with them, know where they are in their life, and make sure that we follow up on that. Next slide, please.
May I interject something really quickly there
Yes,
before we go
ma'am.
to the next slide? Is it
Yes,
okay?
ma'am.
Oh, okay. Just a couple of quick things. Jane's point, again, we're right on. Please be kind to yourself as well. I know some of us are really focused on other people and taking care of other people, and that's lovely. It's also lovely that we take care of ourselves. So remembering, even just mentally, to sort of give yourself a pat on the back. As a human, we have a negativity bias. That's a survival trait, again. If there's only one terrible thing that happens, guess what? If we get 500 compliments in a day and one critique, what are we going to dwell on when we go to bed at night? We're going to think about that one thing, right? So being aware of that, knowing that we have a negativity bias, it's normal to have that, and it's meant to be protective. Once we know about it, we can change our focus. We can shift to say, wow, there was that one tense spot today, and gosh, I wish I'd said this instead of that. However, it's really good that all these other wonderful things happen. Give yourself time to savor and soak in the good, right? Let that smile that somebody gave you enter your memory. Remember when you walked up to somebody and their face lit up, they were so glad you were there. These little tiny things, and those are so nourishing. Just like fresh air is nourishing, just like food is nourishing, just like sleep is nourishing, all the wonderful things that happen and all the sense of accomplishment. Okay, I wish I would have done that differently, but wow, look at all this other stuff I did. And it's really cool that I learned this new thing and I remembered to practice it at least once. Great, yay. Okay, now I'll be quiet.
No, that's perfect. That's a perfect segue to our next slide, Yi-Wei. Thanks.
Yay.
Okay, Jane, I'm going to ask one more time. Let's try that one more time. Let's see if we can hear Linda this time.
Perfect.
Linda?
Hello, am I on speaker now?
Yes, we can
Hello?
briefly hear you through Sherry. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to say before you go on, for some reason, I've been having trouble getting in on the presentation. I could hear most of it. The slide you're looking at now that says psychological first aid, if you were to see my picture, I am the person in the back listening to a mother and her 6-year-old son. So that's who I am.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Do you want to finish this and then let me add a couple of things, Jane, at the end?
Yes, we just have this. We have one more slide and then questions, and you can jump right on, Linda.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, Sherry, for being the go-to for that. I appreciate that. And as Darlene just said, kindness is so powerful. There's a lot of research that shows being kind, it really boosts our energy and makes us happy. And in the big picture, maybe we're going to live longer and everything, but it really does make ourselves feel better. But the important thing is to be genuine. Be genuine and authentic in your kindness. A lot of times that takes courage. We don't know people. We don't know our volunteers. We don't know our clients. So take the time to learn how to be kind. It takes that empathy. It takes really a lot of intention and commitment. And as Brad Kaiserman likes to say, practice relentless kindness. We talk about kind individuals, they're empathetic, they're understanding, and they tend to treat others with respect, regardless of any differences. They're generous people with their time and resources, and they go out of their way to help those in need. I feel like that's a given if you are a Red Cross volunteer, because we are freely giving our time, our skills, and our abilities. So, there we are, right there, flexible and kind. That's us. So when we are being flexible in our life, we are constantly adapting to these changing situations and environments. And when when we're adapting to them, we're not doing it with stress or drama. We're trying to plan, make plans ahead of time and then have all these different options. You'll hear me talk about, oh, plan A and B, but also we really have to think about it. And we can't just sit around. Sometimes we have to respond really quick, but we really need to stay calm in this time of change. And again, be versatile. It could take some creative thinking. It could take just a moment of creativeness, and we could find an alternate plan on how this is, make things happen in our shelters. So being kind and flexible helps. And part of why you guys joined us tonight is to be part of this solution when things go wrong in our community and at our shelters, whether it's with feeding or logistics. We work in very complex shelters, mega shelters, empty shelters, and we work with volunteers that come in. They come in from all over the country. And there really sometimes is no right answer to every situation that you are going to find yourself in. But just so you've got this community behind you to ask for support. Every person on this meeting to workshop, whatever you want to call it, they're here to help, and I just want you to guys to feel comfortable in that and have your phone a friend ready. So, we've covered a lot of topics today. We talked about having these difficult conversations and conflict and aggression in the shelter and how to de-escalate a conflict. We talked about what is stress and how to smile. We talked about dealing with misbehaving clients and volunteers. And then we talked about psychological first aid. Well, what I'm really hoping for is that you guys have some questions or concerns that Linda and Darlene, our mental health professionals, can take time to address since we're all here together. Next slide, please, Iwe. Do we have any questions or comments? Linda, did you want to come on through Sherry? I kind of like this. She's speaking through Sherry to get to our meeting. Come on and give us your comments, Linda.
Thank you, Jane. I was trying to follow along with the slides as I was trying to get on again. And I just wanted to reiterate a couple of things that you said. You did a fantastic job, Jane, as you always do. DMH and spiritual care now is also often associated with us. But DMH is there primarily to help the client, but also to help the volunteers. I don't know how many of you have worked in shelters or have been deployed and gone to other parts of the country to do shelter work. It is very stressful. And there are times when you need to take a break and ask for some help for yourself. And that is another reason mental health is there. In the larger disaster responses, mental health will walk around and check on people. So don't feel like we're looking over your shoulder, but sometimes the stress really gets to you. It might be something that a client says that hits home with you personally. And if that happens, that's when you need to step back and either introduce the client to another volunteer or let them come back and talk with a DMH volunteer. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, Jane, about personal space. Sitting on a person's cot or giving them a hug. A lot of people don't like to be touched. And so if you feel it's time for a hug and you really want to do that, I would suggest you ask, do you mind if I give you a hug? You've really gone through a lot, and I just want to show you how much I appreciate it, something like that. One thing I need to tell you about, if you're with a client, and especially if it's in the evening or at night, do not go outside with them alone. Do not. Don't take them outside. We've had some troubles on past DRs with that. And also talking about misbehaving clients. You're not trained necessarily. Some of you may be trained in psychosomatic issues or psychosis and things like that. If you have a client that you are really concerned about, who, like Jane said, is acting out a lot, before you call security, if you think the person may have other issues, it's good to have a DMH volunteer join your conversation with that person and do just a brief assessment to see if maybe it's a medical issue, he needs his medication, or maybe he is just a violent person and needs to be escorted out by security. But DMH is there to help not only the clients, but to help you. So if you're having difficulties, do come and talk with us. I think that's about it, Jane. Those were the notes I was taking as you were going along. But questions may come up for any of us now.
No, that's perfect. I'm hoping, does anyone have any questions for Darlene or Linda since they're here tonight?
We do. Okay, so before we go to all those questions, I want to thank everyone again for presenting. And I probably like to practice this on myself today, using Jane's sandwich method and also using Darling's and method. So thank you again so much for presenting to us. Thank you, Jane, for sending the slides to me ahead of time. Thank you for being flexible. Thank you for trying to log onto the system using different various methods so we can all hear you. And thank you so much, Sherry, for letting us to borrow you through media so that we can hear Linda. And one thing that I probably would love for the future is if we can do a sound check before so that we can hear everyone perfectly. I know that we have comments in the chat thinking that I'm calm. I'm probably the least calm person right now. And I loved that Darlene mentioned mirror neurons. And to say that if we do have a calm tone, then we can probably affect each other so that we can stay calm. I think this session is perfect for me in the situation. Someone mentioned that don't overschedule themselves. I am a person that I do overschedule myself. I have multiple division national training going on simultaneously. And I think from the very beginning, I do sound a little stressed and I am a little stressed. But I think towards the end, when we're wrapping up, especially seeing this lovely dog on this picture, I think I'm much calmer now. Okay, now I finished my little practice. Let's go to questions. For the team, Jane, Darlene, and Linda. We mentioned, evicting clients are the last resources, and we can use escalations and other methods to deal with stress. So when is it appropriate for us to contact security or call 911 on clients?
Jane, do you want to address that?
Well, I can start it. So it depends on the situation when we're talking about when security is going to be called. I'm hoping, if security is needed, they're already at the site. A lot of times, they're aware of the situation or the client that's, struggling with their emotions or something. And, sometimes it's just a matter of when is the behavior escalating beyond what we can uh, appropriately deal with at our shelter. And again, that takes a lot of conversations and phone calls with our sheltering manager lead, headquarters lead. That would be conversations, um, with our DMH, our mental health, with health services. We like to have a lot of conversations first. Again, but if things go bad really fast, I'm hoping, that if 911 needs to be called, it they arrive quickly and the client, understands that, they can't stay at the shelter. Because sometimes it can be a slow evolving event, and sometimes it can be really fast. So it's hard to say, when to, call security. Again, it's about your safety and it's about our client's safety. If our clients are threatening other clients, or if they're threatening our volunteers, we have to really take action on that and not just ignore it. What do you think, Linda or Darlene?
I was going to say probably exactly what you were saying, but I was going to add, if you are a shelter worker, you should not be making the call yourself. You should let your supervisor or someone who is a supervisor know about it first, and so you can kind of talk and get their assessment of what's going on with the client. I mean, it's a big responsibility to have someone evacuated from a shelter. So it's something, if you have time, you need to kind of go through a process and talk it through with a supervisor.
Right, and I'm in agreement with each and both of you. Danger to self or danger to somebody else is just generally the rubric for calling in external help. And sometimes there's a county mental health triage available. We had a person at the shelter who the triage people needed to come in because there was a threat. And they took them to mental health. They didn't take them to, they didn't just kick them out. So there are people who have pre-disaster mental health issues that can be quite severe. So bottom line, and though, there is, for most people, a continuum. And I found the security people at the shelter in San Diego quite knowledgeable and quite gentle and kind and compassionate. So, and sometimes the clients that were having some difficulty seemed to respond quite well to them. So it's a judgment call. And it's kind of a risk assessment. What's the level of risk here? And when it's a danger, an imminent threat to self or somebody else for harm, that's when, kind of the rather quickly, that needs to be addressed. But I think you're right. It would take somebody else. I would even want to go to either the lead or the manager or security, because they are experienced in dealing with that, I think. Am I correct about that, Jane?
You are, but not everybody is, because we have a lot of new people. We just want to make sure people know that there's always someone to ask. If you have to make the decision, make sure, that you contact someone on that. All right.
Right.
Do we have other questions, Iwe?
Yes, we do. Thank you so much, Darlene, Linda, and Jane for answering the first one. The other question we have is, we talked about a lot of de-escalation and conflicts in the shelter. In reality, from your experience, how often do we observe conflicts in our shelters?
Well, I will take that one first. So it all depends. Everything depends on our clientele, the situation, and how this is evolving. It could be, a lot of times in the mega shelters, it's just a matter of there are way too many people in one small space. It could be, a lot of people experiencing homelessness, and they, the situation of staying inside and following rules they may not like. So, sometimes we have no problems at all, and we can go through a whole event and we have absolutely nothing. And sometimes it's just a constant. So it's really hard to pin down exactly, what would, cause that. A lot of times it's, I use the word misbehavior. Some clients just want to push and see how far they can go. And we have to be, the people that, just keep smiling and treating them with kindness to the point where, it's just that was enough, and it's time. So I hope that answers the question. If, Darlene or Linda have any other comments, please add to it.
And there are times when clients come in to a shelter and they're not getting along, or they just like one another before they even get there. It may be a marital situation, or some of the homeless people who know one another from the streets and don't get along may come in. But, it started before they got into the shelter. So the first thing to do is obviously try to diffuse them and then separate them. But sometimes it is the overcrowdedness, but sometimes people come in with those feelings for another person.
Right, and I'd like to again validate what Linda and what Jane said. My experience often is when people are that way, even they know it, and they will ask if they can have a corner, and they can put up a barrier, a separation that kind of gives them a quiet spot that's helpful. That said, when I was in San Diego, there were so many people, and relatively speaking, by and large, most people were supportive, kind, and I'm talking about the clients now as well as the Red Cross staff. The preponderance of people were great, right? All kinds of people. And they were even tolerant of each other. There was a person there who was having a psychotic issue and was going around and sort of preaching at other clients and all kinds of people. And, most of them, and I was sort of shadowing him to help keep things safe, but there was a look of compassion on the faces of the other clients as well. So, again, the negativity bias, the ones that stand out for us that we remember are the ones that are more stressful and more difficult. As far as sheer numbers, the sheer numbers were way more, were great.
Perfect. I'm glad she thought it worked so well for us in San Diego. We do have a hand up, Iwe. I can't really tell whose hand is up and how long it's been up.
Yes.
Does
Let's
someone
take
have
the
a comment?
hand. Yes, Colleen, would you like to come off mute?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm a disaster spiritual care, and I am loving being on this call. I love the way you're preparing. I'm hearing that there are a lot of new shelter workers. I'm here because a lot of what we do as spiritual care and disaster mental care and health services is we go into the shelters and help inside there. I love how you're letting the volunteers know it becomes stressful. One of the things that I noted, I agree with, gosh, you guys are doing such a great job. But, and also, when I spent 4 weeks in Maui, and one of the things I noted for our volunteers is you're beautiful people. You're going in to do this lovely thing for people. And sometimes they're like everybody's been saying, the stress gets high on us. And there are things called help now strategies. Somebody mentioned our nervous system. Sometimes we bump up against our own nervous system and we get bumped out of that resilient zone. And so sometimes it's not a bad thing. It's a human thing. And we can't always react kindly in the moment. So we can step away. We can have a drink of water. We can call that colleague in to take over for us, because sometimes we will get bumped out. And it's a natural human thing. We're not always going to be able to respond in the moment the way we want to. And there are things we can do to step away and let our nervous system get back in check and get into that place of resiliency. And I just love that those of you that haven't experienced DROs yet are getting a really good picture of it's a wonderful thing to do, and you have a lot of help. Disaster mental health is there, spiritual care is there, your manager is there. Use it all. Use your people back home. It's all there to help you have a good experience inside of what can be a very stressful disaster response. People have just lost a ton, and they're not going to respond out of their best. So I just love what's going on here. And I wanted to pop in and say, wow, you're doing such a great job giving a good picture of what it's like. So thank you for this evening of what you're preparing us for.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And for those of you volunteers who have not participated in like a mock shelter demonstration like we had 2 weeks ago on Saturday, I highly recommend that you find the time to do that. We had a lot of folks who were role-playing very realistic types of things that happen in shelters. So it gives you an idea of what really goes on. If you haven't participated in one of those, do please try to come to the next one.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Colleen, for your kind words. I love that you mentioned disaster spiritual care. I think you bridged us to a very, very good topic for next week. Next week, Alan and Laura is going to share with us that sheltering is a team effort. Just like what Jane said today, just like what Darlene and Linda and Colleen said today, sheltering is a team effort. You're able to reach out to all your folks or your colleagues to help support the function of sheltering and mass care and disaster services in general. Before we take the next question, I'd like to remind everyone to put in your hours on Volunteer Connection. You're going to put your own hours in, and your region is going to be the one approving it. So 1.5 hours for today, remember to put that in. And if you didn't put in your previous hours, which I usually never do, remember to put that in as well. And I'm slowly catching up to put in my hours. And next week will be the same time, same link. This recording will be posted to YouTube later on this evening. Okay, let's take two more questions, Jane, if you
That'd be perfect. Can you just advance one more slide for us, please? And we'll take more questions.
Yes. Okay. We have another lovely pictures on here. Okay. So, do all shelters have medical services on site?
Medical services like health services, is that the question? Please define.
Let's just go with Karen is the one asked the question. So let's go with medical services, breaking down to medical services for health services and also disaster mental health. Can we break down to two sections?
We can. So when a shelter is open, as you know, we like to say, if we have 2 volunteers there, it's considered open, and those are shelter volunteers. There's no way absolutely every single person can get to a shelter and working at it the second we open. We have to get our initial wave going. Of course, we're trying to get health services there. They are a phone call away. Same with mental health. We can get a phone and we, call if we need their assistance. So, but we do try to have health services on site at our shelters 24 hours a day. Again, mental health, a lot of times it is just during the day, but I have been encouraging people to not stick to the day shifts, maybe do a later in the afternoon towards evening, especially based on the clientele. So we try to have, enough coverage. So if there's any issues that come up later in the evening, we have some spiritual care or mental health to help out the volunteers that are on the site. Does that answer your question?
Karen, you can let us know in the chat. We have another question.
Can I add one, Linda, I add one thing to that. If you ever go to a mega disaster where there's a huge shelter like there was following Katrina, which was housed at a fairground, and there were multiple buildings and lots of people. They actually did set up and brought in doctors and nurses because there were so many people there who had medical issues and who needed to be in hospital bed and needed medications and things like that, and there were not enough hospitals to take the people. So Red Cross has set them up, but it's very rare that we have that kind of service.
Thank you. Let's go to the next question. Does the Red Cross send our own security teams?
We do not currently have security teams. That is that would be a 6409 that we would submit to get security on site to make sure, what the situation is. And we can always ask for more or less, especially if, we're starting out. We don't even know if we're going to have any clients to begin with. So as our clientele come, we can request security. I think it really depends on the situation. And as everyone knows, our LSAP, the life safety asset protection, is, going away. It's going to be a safety officer, but that's not really security. We really want to make sure we understand, it's like, what did we call that? It's like concert security or ballpark security. A lot of times though, if we can get a sheriff, to stop by every once in a while, just to talk to our clients, it brings a sense of security to our clients. And we want to make sure, our clients feel secure and that's the most important thing. Does anyone have any comments to that?
I think you're the expert on that one, Jane.
No, I have
All right.
nothing to add.
Wait, do we have one more question? I know we're running out of time here tonight.
I'm not seeing any other questions. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat or any questions in the Q&A section. I think we're all good. I think we can wrap it up. Jane and Linda and Darlene, do we have any last tips for our audience to see, how we can handle stress?
I think Jane did a wonderful job, and there are many things that Red Cross offers for you to de-stress. And if you meditate, if you do yoga, if you do things like that regularly, do them when you're working at a shelter too during your free time.
Thank you, Darlene and Jane.
Jane?
No, I really appreciate everyone staying on tonight and taking the time to listen to us. We don't talk about these topics enough, and I want to make sure everyone knows that we're all there for each other. Darlene, did you have any other comments to add?
Nope, just resilience is something that is important in our day-to-day lives. And so all the things that Jane mentioned, all the things that Linda mentioned are all perfect. It's just taking good care of ourselves, remembering to take good care of ourselves as well as taking care of others.
And I think with that, Iwe, again, thank you for being the moderator. Thank you, Sherry Curtis, for being a talk-through person. And thank you, Darlene, for coming on tonight. I really appreciate everyone joining us. And you guys can have back your evening and enjoy the weekend.
And thanks to all the participants. You guys are wonderful. Thank you. And of course, Jane and Linda and Iwe, I'm just